All right, guys, so this is my second professional development workshop that's going to fall under culturally responsive teaching, and this is differentiated instruction in a culturally responsive classroom. My name is Savannah Biswanger, and we're going to dive in and just see how important this tactic is and this strategy is in the scheme of culturally responsive teaching. All right, so again, I just laid out a lesson outline, so this way it can easily be turned into a lesson plan. So we just have our title slide, our lesson outline slide. We're going to go into our introduction and objectives and just kind of make sure everybody knows what is hoped for to get out of this presentation. We're going to address what differentiated instruction is, the principles of differentiated instruction, strategies, and then flexible grouping, ongoing assessment, the implementation of an exit ticket. I did include another interactive activity, a little time for group discussion and Q&A. And then this is the exit ticket slide that would be more so for the PD side of this. And then I followed up with a resource page again. Like in the first presentation, if this time is very limited with the recordings, so there's a good chance we may not make it into the interactive activities, but these are great to come back to and just refresh on when you have time to do so. Okay, so for this presentation, the objectives that I hope that you all take away is the ability to understand the principles of differentiated instruction, being able to learn how to integrate differentiation with culturally responsive teaching practices, and to develop strategies to meet the diverse needs of each student. So, there are different little pieces that make up each of these things we're kind of studying on that go into a broader topic. So just for differentiated instructions, it is built of several different strategies that can then be into the subhead of differentiated instruction. So I really like this. This is one of my favorite ways to look at things. I will say I do have a hard time speaking on equality and equity as I've not went through some of the hardships that I know that minorities and others go through, but I do appreciate the fact that you cannot get these two words confused. You can give somebody the same materials and it's just not going to come out the same way. We've got to make sure that we're addressing things at the root cause. We have to give students what they need, not make it fair, make it a way to succeed. I also love the ladder analogy. Just because every student has a ladder, if the steps aren't built just for that student to make their way up to the top, it's not going to happen. We as educators, we have to make sure that we see those gaps and we have to address those. So again, great picture to have as reference, equality and equity. They're not the same thing. Okay, so what is differentiated instruction? This is tailoring instruction to meet individuals' needs. So these can come in the ways of how you present your content, how you do the process of your teaching, what your products of your teaching are expected to be, the learning environment you give your students. It's not a single practice, sorry. It's actually several things made up into one that give you this result of a differentiated classroom. So teachers can provide these three things or multiple things, and by doing so, they should accomplish being able to gain that flexibility in their classroom to reach each person and give them the type of learning environment they need to succeed. So here's another little infographic. As time has changed, there was 5 implements, 6 implements. I've seen so many different infographics, but I really liked this one. I felt like it hit all the parts. So, there's addressing the content. So what you present to the students, the readiness, the way you measure how your students understand. You got to see the interest. So watching and making sure they're encouraged and involved. their learning preferences. You know, not every student wants a textbook, not every student wants a PowerPoint. Some people want to be able to use forms of technology, others want that hands-on learning environment. We just have to know that about our students. We need to know the product we expect and the process that it's going to take to get there. So all these different elements, they make up and go into differentiated instruction. Another way to look at this, I think that in the new age, we know that these things are not as uncommon. We want to do this for our students, but we need to make sure that we're not being influenced to do traditional classroom tactics. We have to kind of step back and say, is this because this is what I experienced as I was going through school, or is this because I was, you know, influenced by this because of a bad experience? So just make sure that you're looking at things to stay unbiased. You're not, you know, kind of falling back into old ways. You're making sure that there is plenty of forms of learning, and you're just honoring people's opinions and just making your students feel comfortable, and just giving multi-option assignments and time frames. Like, we have to just accommodate and make sure there's not just a standard way of learning or a standard way of testing in the classroom. Also, flexible grouping is great. We need to make sure whenever we're doing grouping, though, and I think that this is something that we overlook a lot, mix it up and make sure that there are all aspects of learning in a singular group. You don't want all of the people that are bookworms and that highly succeed to always be grouped together. They need to be those that help others see, maybe this is a way I want to start studying. This is a way that I want to start trying to tackle subject matter that I have a hard time with. And then the same for those that are more creative or that possibly see things from a different light. It's really nice to experience different ways of looking and learning things. So by doing these flexible groupings, the students will feel more comfortable asking questions in small groups. So you can do, you know, group, if you have a class of 20, do 5 groups, and then interchange them when you change modules and change different standards in the classroom. This way, they're getting to meet people, they're getting comfortable with those people, and you may even help them develop more friendships along the way. So these groups can be flexible and formed by level, skill, interest, or learning style for true differentiation. The teachers can use formative assessment strategies more effectively by doing these flexible grouping forms of teaching. A specific focus can be addressed to a target audience. So while you're splitting them up, they could be going after certain things. Not everybody has to work on the same thing. And then activities can be going on simultaneously when students work in these small groups. All right, so what is it and what is it not? Consistently grouping students based on like, readiness, or ability level. That's the biggest takeaway. You do not do flexible grouping just so all your kids that are getting the material can work together and the others can fall behind. And then what is it? Mindfully organizing students for different learning experiences. So just make sure that they're all getting to be creative and see different ways of thinking and working through material. So examples, grouping students with similar interests. Maybe they don't learn the same, but they both like engineering, they both like chemistry, but they may tackle it a different way. And then why try it? It allows students to make academic and social connections that build confidence and deeper source or sense of collaboration. So, you know, ongoing assessment, I think this is very self-explanatory. You just want to make sure there are ways and methods to continuously keep up with your students and know if you're hitting those points that you want, to make sure that they gather all the material. And then you can keep up and see what was harder for students to get to and grasp, and then what others were able to really take and just excel at. So have different ways of testing this. You know, you have to have formative, but also have those fun little activities, and just make sure that every student is getting the material as they should. Here's another infographic. I am running a little close on time, so I'm just going to kind of jump through real quick, and this can all be revisited. So this is about the balance assessment. Just make sure, like I said, that on your ongoing assessment, you are hitting all the different forms of assessment. The exit ticket is a super fun way to make sure that your students are getting the material and that you did cover the modules like you should. So really check into exit tickets. If you haven't used them in the past, I highly suggest them. You can make them themed and more targeted to your classroom dynamic and what y'all are all interested in. This is just an infographic of how they can measure and just be implemented in your classroom. Another interactive activity, following up with group discussion and Q&A, and this is something that can also be as a refresher right before school gets started. And then this would be your personal exit ticket as the professional development group. So, you know, you could always have this just to kind of remind yourself about what was talked about and how classroom management is so important in culturally responsive teaching. These were my resources, and I truly appreciate you taking the time today to join into my PD. And if you have any further questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me, and I hope you have a great school year.